to show you in the beginning, this rig. So yes, this is on the piece of paper you have there. This rig has a lot of names. Basic rig, sliding sinker rig. Here they call it a mutton rig if you're offshore. Okay, well basically what it is, and then they gave me supplies so that everybody can try this. But I'm going to jump into some talking, and then we can go back to this. But first of all, this is the rig you will use most of the time offshore here when you're bottom fishing. But if you change the weight and the hook on this, it's probably the most basic, versatile setup. You could use it, I just put it away, but you could use this off the dock with the kids with like a little tiny 1/4 ounce egg weight, a very small one. Or if there's light current, you might be able to get down to the bottom offshore with a 1. Versus heavy current or your anchor fishing, you might take this up to 3, 4, 5, 6 ounce. So this rig can do it's all the same mechanics. You're just changing the weight and probably what hook you're going to use based on what bait you're going to use. So if you're just using a little shrimp off the dock, you're going to use a little tiny J hook, put it in the shrimp, and you're going to have a little tiny weight because that's all you need in that situation. So I tried to write out the steps. Basically, you have the main line that we talked about. This is most of the line that you're fishing with, okay? Also, instead of tying a line-to-line knot, which we didn't get to yet, we talked about using the barrel swivel in place of that knot. So, like, who said they were fishing off the dock this weekend, I think? So, on my email?
One fishing in a canal.
Oh, okay, canal. So, but I'm saying this scenario would work if you had a little piece of chunk bait or if you had a little shrimp. So it's main line, then you're gonna put the egg sinker on. Not all, but a lot of egg sinkers have the fat side and the skinny side. So you thread through the fat side and it comes out the skinny side. Okay, so you have the main line with the egg weight, then I go through this barrel swivel, right? And I tie that clinch knot that we learned last time.
How do you decide how much line goes between the weight and the barrel swivel?
There's not going to be any because it's going to slide down. That's why it's called the sliding rig.
Okay.
Okay, so I tied that clinch knot that we all talked about. And now, just like I wrote on those directions, the egg weight, right? It's like its little stopper. So you have the main line with anywhere from a little 1/4 ounce dock egg to, oh, I have, 40-pound mono on here and I'm going to use 60-pound leader and I have a 3 ounce, 4 ounce. So that, okay, so that's, the mechanics are all the same. And also barrel swivels come in sizes. The bigger the number, the smaller they are. Oh man, okay, so like a 7 is a real small one for the dock. And then what I use is probably a number 5, right? Okay, so you have the main line, the egg weight, the barrel swivel, and now I'm gonna choose what leader do I want. So am I fishing offshore at 150 feet? Maybe I'm gonna use mono, dark water. I don't need to use my fluoro. Or, are we fishing in maybe 70 feet inside the ledge here and it's a real clear day? I'm gonna go fluoro. So some of the stuff we were talking about last time, this is when all those, I'm gonna make those choices. So, and then we'll get into, like I said, every scenario is different. Like if I'm anchor fishing, I'm using usually a shorter leader because we're near structure and I don't like to get rocked up. But generally speaking, I'd say, a wingspan, 3-4 feet, maybe 6 feet. But when you get used, that's so your weight, and we'll get into this, and then your bait is going to be over here. So that's really what it is that you want to keep your bait a little bit away from your tackle, but not so far away that you know, don't know where it is. Okay? So let's do the wingspan. Okay, so that's like 3 or 4 feet. Okay, so now, same thing. I'm going back to the, but let's say maybe that I'm gonna use some heavier leader, then I told you I would use the uni knot. So if I'm offshore in deep water and I'm using 50 or 60 pound mono, because we're fishing like 150 feet, 180 feet on the blue heron, you know, then I'm gonna probably use that uni knot, because the clinch knot does not cinch down on that heavier pound test. Okay, so now I'm all the way up to mainline, weight, barrel swivel, leader, and now you're gonna make the hook choice. So like I said, if you're talking about a little shrimp off the dock, you're talking about a little J hook. You know, if you're talking about, and we're going to talk about each rig separately, but what I like to use are these Mustad Ultra Points. So here's a circle hook. And again, so let's say I'm going to put one whole sardine plug on here. We'll get to that, or whatever. Whatever your bait of choice is. So again, I'm just using, that's the same knots that we've already learned. It's going to attach the hook. So that's your whole rig right there. And that'll take you, I'm repeating myself, but it'll take you from the dock to offshore. Okay? Okay, so we'll practice this at the end, but I just wanted to, you know, start with something practical before we just get into more. Another tip is don't put your hook on the inside of the guide, okay? Because you're going to nick it over time. Put it on this arm. Because then, let's say you do get the fish you want, and the line is rubbing and rubbing and rubbing on that little nick inside the guide. Something I'm careful about, because I don't want to lose my fish when my time comes. Okay, so let me go back to, so that's the basic rig, sliding sinker rig, mutton rig. That's because that's one of the main target species offshore. Do you have a question?
Yeah, how heavy was the egg weight, did you say?
That was a 1.
Oh, okay.
That was a 1, yep. And what I would say is that I normally ask the guys on the boat, what are you putting on the boat rods? So if they're like, oh, we've been using 1s, we're going to start with 1s, then I start with 1s. If they say, oh, there's been a lot of current, we're going to start with 2s, then I match what they do. Okay. So again, muttons are one of the target species here, so a lot of guys call that a mutton rig. Okay. The egg weight slides the main line, and we went over that. Okay, so generally speaking, we can't talk about offshore fishing in one class even, right? So super general, you could drift fish, anchor fish, trolling, kite fishing, deep dropping, jigging. They're all their own sport, to be completely honest. You know, my friends are like, why don't you do jigging? I'm like, because I'm already doing too many things, you know? So each one of these, you can do all of them, or you can specialize in any of them. Okay, so we're just going to do bottom fishing, and I talk a lot about drift boats and head boats because it's really the best opportunity for you to get time in on the water. They go all of the time. There are all different kinds of them, and it's the most affordable. And generally speaking, they're going to help you, you know, give you some tips along the way. But I can tell everybody, you can do charter fishing, and when I travel, I love to do that and learn how they do it in other places. But if you just even did charter and money wasn't an issue, they're just handing it to you. You're not really feeling the bite, you're not really making all those choices, so it's fun when you get, you know, when you get a bunch of girls together, and sometimes, like I said, we do like little road trips where we go over to Hubbard's, or we go down to the Keys, or we go up to Ponce Inlet, so it's fun. like there's not a whole bunch of pressure. So quickly, parts of the boat, and that's a little bit safety, like just in case you did hear some kind of like port side emergency or something like that. So the port is the left side, the starboard is the right side, the bow is the front, and the stern is the back, also the cockpit. And like I said, you could be on the boat and the captain could yell some emergency in the bow, and it's good to know where that is, right? Okay. So generally, head boat is also called a drift boat, a party boat, but what it is a like open group boat, not a private charter typically. And there's bigger ones like the Blue Heron, and then here we're lucky in Jupiter because there's tons of small ones. So it's actually perfect for like girls trips because once you have a couple people, you have your own one little area. Okay, so target species. What was interesting is I had never fished the Gulf, so when we did fish on the Hubbards, I had to learn all the Gulf regulations for that. And they only use circle hooks over there. There are no J hooks on that entire boat. So, and they just do a lot of different fishing. Like they use a lot of pinfish at nighttime for mangrove snappers, whereas we don't really use that bait as much over here. I'm going to get into all of that, but so Atlantic, Gulf, not just seasonal. Okay, so in general, I'm talking about either reef fish, which are more resident, snapper species, mutton, mangrove, yellowtail, vermilion snappers. You know, we have a lot of more exotic species. Those are the bread and butter. Porgies, wintertime especially, we have a really good porgy bite right now. Groupers are out of season, right? May 1st, that'll open up again. So those are our resident reef fish. Is that snapper porgy family, I would say. And then, and we have other ones. We have like African pompano, amberjack, but then there's also pelagics, which are more migratory. So you have tuna, mahi, even pompano on the beach.
What was the word you said? Pelagics?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
Yep.
What is
Yes.
a pelagic?
Deep water, blue water
Okay, so
species.
it's migrating.
Mhm. Yeah, like the brand, the company,
Okay.
because they started with offshore gear.
Okay.
Sure. So that's on here, target species. So pelagics are those deep water species, really. But the other thing is that a lot of them are highly migratory, you know, so, and not just sailfish. But like I said, king mackerel. So certain times of the year, you can go on the head boat and it's just like king mackerel everywhere, or banded rudderfish anywhere, you know. And then other times of the year, not as much. So like, honestly, May is one of my favorite times to fish here, or June. The wind drops out, the weather is beautiful, it's not super hot. You can get a good shot at blackfin tuna, mahi, summer sailfish. You know, yeah, they're all sailfishing right now in this wind, but you can catch a lot of them in June. So I like to do ladies trips then, by the way, because we have good target species and the weather's normally nice. It's hard other times of the year, like right now. So that's all. There's just, that's just the main difference. You know, think about it. Sometimes you're fishing that reef or structure or wreck, and then other times you're fishing this more like, and kingfish can be mid-column, or you can get a bite when you're bottom fishing, you know, but they're more like mid to top water, top column, moving through kind of thing. Like the kingfish, if one guy gets one, like hold your rod, because everybody will get one, and then they'll keep moving. So, okay. Drift versus anchor fishing. Okay, so when you drift fish, the number one, everyone fishes on one side of the boat. Okay, if you're on the Blue Heron, or if you're on any of these like Country Club or Mystic Rose. The number one question, especially when it's crowded, is somebody will say, well, why can't I just go fish over there where no one's fishing? And I'm like, sir, if you go fish over there, your line's going to go right under the boat and tangle with this gentleman who's standing here. So it's all about the mechanics of, let's say we're going to go right inside the ledge, 90 feet, and we're going to drift you know, normally we have north current here, so that would be that way. Sometimes we have south current, but most of the time we have north current here. So let's say they start in Juneau and they drift, you know, up to the inlet, or they start at the inlet and they drift up to Hobe Sound, kind of scenario. You know, so you're drifting over all this productive fishing grounds. And so as the boat is drifting like this, your lines are also drifting like that. So that's why everybody goes on one side. And there are benefits, I think. Like, you get a lot more cobia on the head boats. My buddy's been catching them almost every trip now. And whereas when we're on our boat, it's like much more fewer occasions. And I think that's because of that bait ball that's under the head boats. And the cobia are in those banded butterfish, and they're riding on those sharks, and so all that other activity sometimes brings, you know, a lot of other fish to the party. So when you're anchor fishing, let's say the target structure, wreck, reef, whatever is here, right? You're going to throw the anchor here up current. The anchor's going to go here. Once it sticks, the boat's going to come behind it, right? And then what happens is we're going to chum or throw some stinky stuff, or the scent from our baits are going to attract the fish coming off of this reef or structure. So we're going to be fishing this way, and the fish are going to be coming this way. You don't want to go right on top of the reef or wreck structure, right, and be disruptive. So you kind of want to end up, you want to see where the current is, and then you want to go up current of that, so you're kind of pulling them, asking them to come out, and then you're fishing down towards it, but you don't want to get rocked up on it either. So when you're fishing an anchor boat, because it's positioned like this, then people can fish both sides of it. That's what happens though, is in the back of the boat, right, you could flatline and use very little weight. And then as you go up the rail, the physics of it are you want to increase the weight. So everybody's fighting for the back of the boat. Like, everybody wants to be in the back of the boat. Everyone wants to flatline. I'll just go by myself up on the side, but I'll make sure I'll put maybe like a 3 or 4 ounce on. So I'm holding position that I don't want to slide down the rail and tangle those guys in the back. But if you're in the back, you can do that. So that's just knowing, it's really the physics of it. But on a drift boat, right, it's better when everybody just lets out all the same time and all the same weight, so that all the lines are kind of going out together. If you have one guy right here who insists on using a 3 ounce, his line's going to go like that and take out everybody down on the other side. So that's especially why I ask, hey, what are you guys putting on the boat rods? Because we all start at the same place, and kind of, you have to be more of a team and work together with that. So what I was just saying was, drift fishing, everyone fishes the same side of the boat. So let's say they say, okay, let's let our lines out. As you're letting your line out, okay, let's go back to this conventional reel. Okay, so a spinning reel has the bail that you flip shut, and then the line can't come out until you flip it open. Okay, a conventional reel has the drag. I like has this lever arm instead of the bail. Okay, so now this can come out, but I'm using my thumb to stop it, to prevent the line from coming out. Okay, that's so we're fishing on the rail, the blue heron. They're like, okay guys, we're at the spot. Okay, so everybody starts to let it out. You're letting it out like medium speed. Sometimes I catch a lot of fish on the way down and the way back up, so I don't always rush that, you know. And if you do drop too quickly, a lot of times your bait can, you know, your weight's going so fast, your bait can't catch up and you tangle yourself. So I just go like a nice medium pace until either I feel my weight touch the bottom, but more what it is, and I'd say this applies to other types of fishing, is it's a change in speed. It's a change in rate. So I'm very careful, like I'm letting it out at the same rate. I kind of feel the speed that it's going down, and then all of a sudden it's like pause. So that's how I know that I'm at the bottom. So at that point, if I'm on a drift boat, I stop my finger for a couple seconds and I let the weight come just off the bottom. But then I move my thumb, it's called spooling out. So I keep slowly spooling out at the same rate that the boat is moving is your goal. Because then you're not dragging and bouncing a weight a couple feet off the bottom as the boat moves. So if you just find the bottom and lock it up and the boat continues to drift, you're just dragging your weight and your bait off the bottom. And if there's a lot of current, then you're not even on the bottom because you're scoping up, if you understand what I'm saying. Like your hypotenuse is becoming more flat. So, when you're drift fishing, you find the bottom, and then you slowly let line out as the boat is drifting. Then you are kind of leaving your bait down there where you first found the bottom, in that sweet spot zone. And so if you think you found the bottom, then a lot of times I'll just do 1 or 2 cranks up, because again, my weight could be 5 feet off the bottom, and then I have that nice 3, 4, 5 foot leader we talked about. So I know my bait is somewhere in that zone. But I don't want to be all the way necessarily dragging the bottom, because that's when you're going to get rocked up.
So are you reeling right after you hit bottom, or you find the sweet spot and then you reel through?
I'm letting out at a medium speed. I think that I found bottom. And let's say I'm not sure, so I'll hold it and then I'll let it out again, and I'll wait and see if I get some slack in my line. And if I get that belly, then I know my weight touched the bottom again. Okay? So then I lock up. I do 2 cranks.
Yeah.
So I'm putting line back on. And now I know my weight is probably like a few feet off the bottom. And hopefully my bait is in the sweet spot.
Right.
But then this is open again. I only lock it up and do 2 cranks. Then I open it again so I can keep spooling it out and keep it in that zone.
Yeah.
Right? So if the wind is blowing from the south to the north, right, and it's like good blowing, say 15 or something, okay, and we have good current moving that way, the boat might be moving very, very quickly. So you might be spooling out faster than, you know, if let's say it was an east wind. So there's certain factors and you have to learn to judge that. I mean, I'm a little bit kooky about it, so I actually count. So I kind of know the speed. If I'm going medium, let's say with a 1 ounce, it's maybe 2 feet per second, the way I count. So if I'm fishing in 100 feet, I'm gonna go to, you know, that when I start getting to 40, 50, 60 in my head, I know I should be at the bottom. I know I've counted out 110, 120 feet of line for my own pace. But anyway. Okay, so the spooling part is for drifting. And then second page, when you're anchor fishing, okay, as I was saying, you're up, the boat is positioned up current of the target structure. People can fish on both sides of the boat. And when they say, okay, you know, we're at the spot, then usually the mate will throw the anchor, then you have to let the boat settle in, because now the boat could be affected by you're swaying a little bit, you know, usually. So the boat settles in kind of, you can watch something floating like seaweed and see how the current's going, or you can watch the chum kind of go off the back and see, you know, maybe everybody's going to go to the left behind the boat. So those are just things you could look at, you know, that would give you some clues. So you're anchor fishing. He says we're at the spot, the anchor, the boat sets up, and you drop, and let's say you get to, okay, I'm at the bottom, I feel my weight touch the bottom, then I do the same thing. I lock up, I do 2 cranks, but I'm probably going to stay locked up because you're anchor fishing. The only thing I will say is that and there's exceptions to every rule, but when you're using live bait, a lot of times I'll not be all the way locked up. I'll be using the thumb as my drag, because a lot of times with live bait you want to give them that extra couple of seconds to eat it. It's not like a dead bait where they kind of just pile on it. The live bait is trying to get away. So, hopefully, okay. So good. Let's talk a little bit about. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. I did bring a couple real. Well, I'll show you that when we get to it. Well, so this one, is a smaller conventional. I have it spooled. I usually fish it with 20. This happens to be a 16 because I'm crazy though. So like 20-pound main line is what I would do. 30-pound main line for my lighter snapper. It's called my light snapper reef rod. And then you know you can change your leader, but this little setup I've also caught like over 50-pound kingfish on. So a lot of times your gear is going to outperform your expectation. I'm not really worried about the fish getting so big that it can't handle it. However, especially Joelle, who wants to do long range trips, if you are doing some beefier bottom fishing stuff, especially like a Hubbard's trip where you're using bigger baits, where you're trying to get the nicer gag groupers, that kind of thing, then I like this 2-speed reel. So you can get, what I fish is, that's my light one. I have one that's slightly bigger than that, that I'm more in like the 40-pound range on. And then this one is like 50-pound braid and, you know, probably 60-pound top shot or long leader. So this is my heaviest one that I really use for bottom fishing, and I can just show you. So you're, you know, same thing where you're dropping, you're opening it just like my smaller one, but you have this is called, so this one, let me back up. After you get to the lockup point, what I was going to tell you is you can push this in and go past there when you need that extra power to get that grouper off the bottom. It's like those first, you know, however many seconds of that battle with a big bottom fish is all about you getting it off the bottom so it cannot go back in its hole. And once you get it into the water column, you have a chance. But if you don't get them off the bottom, it's, you know, then you have to choose if you're going to play the waiting game. So let's just back up for 1 second, because there is something called drag, which we haven't talked about yet. So drag is the amount of resistance that the reel is giving you in play. Okay? So I would like you to avoid the following situation. When the drag is not super tight, because you need to play the fish a little bit, you don't want to force it in, and you're winding but you're not gaining line, it makes that sound, and guys on the boat are going to start yelling at you, stop winding against the drag. The problem is they're yelling it at you, and most women don't know how to correct the problem. So we can avoid that. I'm going to tell you how to do it. First of all, when you get a good bite from a bigger fish, sometimes they do need to take a run, like a kingfish, sailfish, maybe mahi. So if it's going, you're letting it do that, okay? But as it starts slowing down and you're feeling it like chugging but doesn't have that initial thing, that's your signal, okay, it's my turn. And maybe it's only one switch, but most likely, so then you start your job as an angler. Everybody needs to realize everybody has one job. You can't do other people's jobs. Your job as an angler is to put the line back on the reel. That's it. And to listen to not everybody on the boat, the captain. Unless the mate's standing right next to you coaching you, because he's listening to the captain, but I know how it feels when everybody's yelling at you and you're like, who am I supposed to be listening to? So it's like, try to drone that out. The fish goes, starts slowing down. You're going to gently lift your rod tip and you're going to start trying to put line back. Now, if you hear that sound and you're not gaining, it looks like it's spinning, but you're not gaining line. Okay? Don't necessarily crank down the drag unless he tells you to. Okay? If you're by yourself, that might be the time when you go 2 clicks, but don't, it's going to be a gradual increase if you do need to go there. But what you're doing, and a lot of people are all this super high motion, you don't need that either. It's pump and wind is what it's called, but it's very short pumps. So you're literally holding it here, 10 o'clock, and what you're doing is pulling the fish towards you, and then you're winding down the slack. 2 cranks, not huge motion up and not all this busyness going down. It's slow lift, get that line back. Slow lift, put the line back on. That's it. And gradually the fish is going to come towards you, or he's going to be like, okay, I see it going this way, or walk towards the bow, or you're going to get further instructions. A lot of times, as you get that fish close to the boat, and then he realizes, oh, I'm near the boat, then he might do that second run. But you're not going like this, because then you're going to make that sound, and you're going to get yelled at. So, it's like, well, because then you get upset, and it takes away from the experience of catching it. So, as the fish comes near the boat, usually they have that second freak out, or that second run. And so then all of a sudden it's so you're just holding tight, letting it do what it's doing, and then when you feel it slowing down or whatever, then that's your turn. And the only thing I will say is do try to be speedy because of the shark problem in Jupiter. Unfortunately, if you take a long time and relax and try to finesse the fish in, sometimes, disaster strikes, and it's really, really upsetting because not even just to lose the fish, but nobody wants to keep feeding the sharks. Yeah. So when I do get a nice fish, like a lot of times I'll have everybody lined up in the boat, and I'm like, listen, we're just focusing on this one fish, and then we'll get back to what we were doing, but I don't want to, lose it to sharks. So when you are using a spinning reel, the drag is up here, and it's just like anything else, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Every time, even if you think you set your drag at home, when you get out there to the pier beach boat, you check the drag, you put your rig on, you check the drag. Usually your most common scenario is it's gonna be like a medium tension. So then if you need to, you're gonna crank it up. One scenario is if you have a reel locked up in the rod holder and you're kingfishing, you lock it up with drag, because otherwise, like, but generally you're gonna have more of like a medium tension on your drag, and then know that when you need to, like, so if you're in that pump and wind scenario and you're really not gaining, it's like a standoff, then it's just 2 little clicks. And it's like, okay, let me see if I can turn the fish and get it to come towards me. So on the spinning reel, it's on the top, righty-tighty. And on the conventional, there's different kinds. So this one is a star drag because of this handle. So I go 2 clicks that way. I like a star drag because I feel like it gives me more control. This one is called a lever drag. So like my friends that fish the head boats, they know they like it at like 75%, like just before strike. And then if she needs to, she bumps it up a little more, bumps it up to strike. But for me, a lot of times when I get excited, I'm like, that's too messy for me. So the star drag, I just lock it up. I already know where the drag is. It's at that medium heavy tension. And then if I need to, I can just, whereas this one, you're pushing it up with the lever to increase your drag. So that's what drag means. That's what, if you do have a fish and somebody's telling you, click your drag up a little bit. If you are going to be on the conventional, it's going to be by the handle, and on the spinning reel, it's going to be on the top. Okay. Anybody questions? Okay. we are at types of bait, party boat info. Okay. Very quickly, I'm gonna combine locations and party boat info because locations does dictate a lot of bait. So in the Keys, you have Yankee Cats is a very well-known long-range boat, Key West, right? And then you have, there's a couple in Marathon. I go to Alamorada a lot. I fish a 3/4 day one, the Miss Alamorada out of Bud and Mary's, or I fish the half-day trips, also a night trip out of out of Robbie's Tarpon is the Captain Michael. And then there's another boat called the Gulfstream in Key Largo. In Miami, the Reward Fleet, Callover, Kelly Fleet. Those are great boats. Like right now, they're on blackfin tuna. They're on some yellow eye snapper that we really don't get up here. Or it's fun to do like just Keys trip, you know, and you do more yellow tailing, which I brought it, but we might run out of time. Then when you get up into so when you're in the Keys, you're mostly using ballyhoo. You get on the boat and they're gonna give you ballyhoo, maybe some squid. You can use full ballyhoo, or you can make chunk ballyhoo, you can make plugs of ballyhoo. I'm going to show you how to do all that. Probably on the beach, it's too messy in here. But then, as you move up Miami and you're into Fort Lauderdale, they start using, Miami's still ballyhoo, and then they start getting into sardines. So like Fish City, Pride in Fort Lauderdale, Sea Legs, Lois Ann, all those. Then you get up into like Boynton is Lady K and Island Time, right? And then the Blue Heron Riviera Beach in here, and then we have all the ones at Square Grouper and so forth. Then, so we're all that is sardines. And I have caught fresh ballyhoo at Juneau here, and taken them on the boat and been like, and not caught fish. And they're like, are you gonna put on frozen sardines, Allie, like everybody else, and start catching? And I was like, I can't believe that the fish would rather have these crappy, mushy sardines over fresh ballyhoo, but that's what they eat here, and that's what they eat when everybody's dropping that. You know, sometimes you think, oh, something different, something fresh. No, they want, that's what they want. And then I learned as you go up to Stewart, and fish some of those boats, Lady Stewart, Safari, those are anchor boats. So the Keys are mostly anchor boats. Then a lot of these Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach are drift boats. And then when you get to Stewart, you're back to anchor boats. The Stewart Inlet, like Jupiter Inlet is great because we only have to go a few miles and we're at our ledge, which is 100 feet plus. If you go 3 miles out of Stewart, you're still in like 60 to 70 feet. I don't know. But you're fishing much more shallow water. They have different fish though. They have black sea bass, whereas very rarely are you going to catch a yellowtail in Stewart. I don't know why, there's a line right here. But they have black sea bass. And versus like down here, we'll still catch the yellowtails. So part of that is species. I like to jump around and catch different stuff. So you have Safari, Lady Stewart. They like to catch a lot of grunts. So